Greetings. Welcome to the DragonCon Urban Fantasy Track author interview series. Today, I am joined by the dynamic duo writing team of Ilona Andrews. Welcome, Ilona and Gordon. It's so nice to see you both, even if it is from afar. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for inviting us to the panel. We're super happy.
Well, it's always my pleasure. Now, the first question that I always ask people, because I'm always curious about this, is that did you both read like fantasy and science fiction when you were children or young adults, or did it come to you later in life?
You go first.
I did. Growing up in North Carolina in the mountains, I had to kind of sneak like the Dragonlance books into the house. My aunt and uncle were very strict, and so no magic, no rock and roll music. But like obviously, I'm in school, I'm a teenager, I'm rebellious. I would sneak the books into the house and read them upstairs. I read those, and I remember being a big fan of anything sci-fi. Like we're talking about cross. An early favorite was Flash Gordon, Thundar the Barbarian, any kind of comics like that, but definitely any kind of book that had like any kind of fantasy theme. I was kind of into that. Even more than I would say sci-fi would be like, fantasy stuff for me was a great escape.
Oh yeah. I imagine that comics were a little easier to sneak than regular books too.
Stuff them into like a hoodie or a jacket, and
or in a notebook or something like that.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, if I had like a Dragonlance book or something like that, I could just put it in my school bag, and as long as I didn't get caught, I was okay. But I couldn't be downstairs where our single source of heat was and read it comfortably in front of the wood stove, because then I'd get busted.
Right.
Yeah. You were more sci-fi though, I know.
It was complicated because there was no fantasy genre per se in Russia at the time. When I was basically a child and a teenager, it was like I'm what they're called like the lost perestroika generation, right? Where perestroika hit us right where we're coming up to adolescence. And so it was a complicated, very confusing time. The social net collapsed. Prior to that, we had science fiction, Strugatsky brothers, but it was very like exploration of communist future kind of science fiction. It still was very interesting. They had some really interesting ideas, right? And a lot of times, if they wanted to write kind of not communism sci-fi, they would set it in the US. Like everybody would have like English names, right? So you would have like kind of ridiculous combinations like Todd Ravencroft or something like for a hero. Like it was interesting. And then once perestroika happened, we were flooded with bootleg copies of sci-fi and fantasy. Harry Harrison was the most popular author in Russia across the board for a while, for a couple of years. We have these in the city where I grew up. That we have this underground kind of passageways that go under very traffic intensive intersections, right? And they almost can get labyrinthine. And people would sell things in those. Like you'd enter it, and there would be stand of like, Harry Harrison, Semak. All people loved Semak. Obviously, Arthur Clarke was huge, and it was actually considered to be educational to read. I know my father handed me the 2001 Odyssey when I was like 9 years old, and was like, "Read it," and I was kind of upset because I didn't get something. But yeah. So for sci-fi, it was golden age. I was blown away by fantasy-wise by two things. We got The Hobbit in the translation, and that was amazing. That was amazing. Didn't get Lord of the Rings until I actually came to the States, but I read The Hobbit. That was great. There was, and this is like child books. Also, in Russia, there was a translation of The Wizard of Oz. But, because of the censorship, the translator had to change a lot of things. And then he just kind of continued the series, making more and more different, basically, adventures in Oz, but they were like wildly divergent from what the actual book and the story was, right?
Yeah.
Very, very interesting, though. So that I read that. And then once the perestroika hit, it was Howard, Conan the Barbarian.
Oh, gotcha.
That was, and then we got Lead Bracket, and that was like revolutionary and eye-opening. And to this day, I wish I could write half as well as Lead Bracket.
No, that's interesting. You mentioned Howard. That's how I got you in college. I had come from the Navy with an extensive collection of Howard books. And I was like, hey. It's almost like, would you like to come back and see my drawings? But it was like, hey, my Robert Howard paperbacks.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It was so much fun to read him in original because although the translation was good, Howard's prose was very tight. Like you would have basically like a page and not a word could be taken out. It was really influential. And now I rambled too much. I'm sorry.
No rambling. It's very interesting because something that we would, that people in this country would just take for granted was very different from your experience, and that is very interesting. Now, something else that I'm always interested in to find out with people who co-write, whether it's all the time or just, whether it's an occasional situation, is how do you actually approach it? I know people do different, that they do have different approaches to how they do this work. And I'm curious how the two of you do that.
We can demonstrate. Will you pretend to type?
Yes, it's just like this, except over on my computer. And like, that's the actual physical process of it. As far as like plotting and stuff, I think it goes to are we pantsers, plotters? I think we're definitely plotters. We at least, even though unfortunately sometimes we plot the end of the book and then we have to figure out how to get there. We normally have the beginning and the end, but like we can plot anywhere because we're always together. So we're plotting in the car, we're emptying and loading the dishwasher. And we don't at this point, 30 years later, have to say concerning such. You can just say something out of nowhere. And I know automatically what she's talking about. We can be driving down the road. We can be doing, she'd say, what if she did this? And I'm like, okay, like I know what she's talking about.
Yeah,
like we're talking about a plot point or a scene. And I'm like, okay, like I get that. Or we, like, again, we've talked about like our favorite thing would be to like float in the pool and drink beer and just, come up with a plot. Like, well, right. In advance, now we have to come up with a story.
Yeah, we actually got in trouble with that one time. So
did we?
Yeah, we were having a particularly thorny plot issue, right? And we had taken the car in to be serviced at the dealership.
Oh.
And so we're standing by a little window waiting for gentlemen to bring us our keys, right?
Oh, up in, yeah.
And I turned to him and I said, we should just kill him. It would solve all the problems. We'll kill him. We should. We can hang him off of a lamppost, right? We can make it really horrific. He'll be covered in blood, and it will give us the emotional impact. And as I said that, the guy comes out, hands the key to Gordon, and like takes off. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, possibly not the best conversation to have. But
very normal conversation.
Very normal for us. Yeah.
Like,
we got a weird look. But yes, we so the way it usually works is, I will dictate, Gordon will write, he will change the sentences as we're writing them down, right? And that's literally how it is. We sit together, we write together. There are times when we're split, and that usually happens when editing happens, right?
Yeah.
It is very difficult to edit together.
Yeah,
We can. So what happens is usually like he does editorial pass and then I do editorial pass on top of it, or vice versa. I do editorial pass and then he does, because it's a lot harder because you're sitting there and you're actively thinking about how to retool a sentence, right? And it's difficult to do this together.
It is. Editing is less collaborative, I would say. And that's the case where we could be in different parts of the world. It's just sending
Sending things
back
to
and
each
forth.
other.
And
Yeah.
I know that is how some people write. Like they're in completely different places. That's normally not applicable for us because we're always here. Basically.
Because if something made it on the page, it's because both of us basically were involved. It's very rare when something goes out without one of us, with only one of us, writing it down or looking.
Yeah, even like I occasionally do like POVs, and they still go to her when I'm done, so that she can look at it.
Yeah, and that's like it's it's a process. I realize that not everybody does it that way. Like Clay and Susan Griffith have completely different process.
Yeah, they're
right?
a married couple too.
And Clay one time asked me, how we were writing, and I explained it, and he said, so you're like that, composer and a lyricist, right? In old times, he's on the piano and the lyricist is singing and like adjusting the song at the same time. And I was like, yeah, kind of. And it's like, that's not how we write. So there's so many ways to do it. I guess probably as many ways as their collaborative partnerships. So yeah.
But ours is affected so much and shaped by being married,
yeah,
forever. So I think for good.
I think we're good. Yes. we generally don't often disagree on what goes on the page. And a lot of times we have learned over the years to just, if one of us has a problem, we still let the other person write it out and then look at it and figure out, okay, why was there a problem? What's not working about this particular chunk? So right. It just depends.
And I think in those cases, whoever kind of wins, if you can say win, is like the person that feels most strongly about it and say, this is why it should be this. Because a lot of times I'll be like, no.
Yeah.
And then but then if she explains it, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Or I'm still like, no, I don't want to do that.
It's not competitive, it's collaborative. You know what I mean?
Well, whatever you do, it seems to work well. So I guess keep doing it.
I think so.
That's that's what it amounts to at the end, and and it sounds as though it works well. That you guys have a rhythm, that you've been doing it for a while now. And speaking of which, I would like it if you would to we'll go down through your different series that you write. And if you could give me what would be your elevator pitch for explaining to our viewers, if there's anybody who happens to be unfamiliar with a particular series, how would you describe it into them? And first we'll start with the Kate Daniels series, which was your first published work, as far as I understand it, anyway. And so what would be your elevator pitch for that series?
Elevator pitches are so specific and they rely a lot on comps.
For Kate, I would say for Kate, like magic apocalypse, vampires and werewolves are real. She's a hard-boiled detective. So much of that is shaped. Honestly, a lot of Kate comes from, like I talked earlier about what I wasn't allowed to read. What I was allowed to read was like detective books, right? So Robert Parker Spencer series were allowed, right? Because he's a cop. And so like, that was sort of like a mystery, I guess, like a hard-boiled mystery with a female lead and vampires and werewolves and...
Yes, fundamentally, Kate Daniels, and this is not going to work for an elevator pitch, but it's a story of a person who was set up to be, well, an antagonist, right? A killer, a person who was basically quintessential bad guy, right?
Mhm.
But because of the circumstances, instead she ends up kind of being the heroine, and it's so hard to, like, in the world where magic floods the planet in waves.
One woman stands
One
alone.
woman stands alone with her sword.
With a
I
sharp
don't
sword
know.
and a small knife.
Yeah, I'm not good at this.
It's hard to say. People are like, did you think Kate would be like 11 or 12 books? And the answer is no. No, we just had one book. Like, we never even really thought much past the second book. So it's like, it's hard to encapsulate the series in an elevator pitch because so much of it evolved as we were writing it for all those years.
Yeah, there's a line in there. I like my sword because it always works. So maybe we'll do something with that. Something like, in the world flooded by unpredictable magic wave, one woman's sword always works. Yeah, something like that. There you go.
There you go. Well, and one thing I do appreciate about the series as well, and is the fact that you do deal with real world situations in addition to this the fantasy world that you've built. And I mean, there's the concern about, oh, it's time to go eat, we need to do that, or I have to sleep. A lot of times you don't get those mentions, and so it does bring that that feel into it. So I always appreciate that. Now,
it's so funny that you said that. One of the very established fantasy authors, and I'm not gonna say who because it wasn't an official blurb, but she read it at some point, and I had like palpitations. I was like, oh my God, so and so read this, and she said, I loved it because horses get tired.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it is something to. I mean, it kind of reinforces the fact that this is supposed to be a world that we recognize, or at least in its former, in its former form, its previous form, before the magic apocalypse. Now, next you had, while you were still writing, Kate, you had the Edge series that came out. And what would you use as your basic description for that particular series?
They had the hardest time with it when Ace was publishing it. They weren't sure what to put on the cover. They weren't sure what to call it. They weren't sure what to classify it as. They ended up calling it rustic fantasy as opposed to urban fantasy.
Yeah.
Because, so this one is really, really tough.
I don't know. It's almost like, because they're it's about people that are marginalized. They're in between worlds. They're not in our world, and they're not in the high fantasy world
where magic works. They're stuck and in between. It's basically, and yes, it is very rural. It is very, kind of that modern rural poverty, wrapped in magic and weirdness. It's difficult to describe, I guess.
I remember where we first were when you talked about it. We were driving in Pooler, Georgia. We were in Pooler, Georgia, which was a semi-rural area at the time. And I remember you mentioning, like, well, what if there was a fantasy book about people that lived in a place like this?
Because we had so much urban fantasy, and it was always like St. Louis, Atlanta, Chicago, or like New York or New Orleans. Yeah, like every other book was set in New Orleans, and I was like, what about the rural? Like, what happens there?
And it's a weird part of rural Georgia where this takes place.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me, like, what would people be like? That's what we always think about. People that were born and raised, like the main character of that particular book, what would she be like, born and raised in that in between? What would her brothers be like? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, and then how do they interact with people from the other?
The iconic line from that series, well, there's two. One says, if Sky could dream, it would dream of dragons. And the other one that the fans love the most is, get your shoes, brush your teeth, get your guns. We're going to Walmart.
Yeah, yeah, I remember. Yeah.
That's the series to me.
Yeah, that's
actually.
the series. That's it. That's my elevator pitch.
I remember, like, very early, yes, one of the boys did something unfortunate, and they had to go into the real world.
Yeah, the shoes.
To get the shoes
Jack,
and come back.
the stuff
And
with
we could,
shoes.
our children were very small at the time. We were still struggling. We could
We related
to that. Yes,
yeah.
obviously we didn't
That
live in
feeling,
between.
that feeling of driving to the grocery store and coming back, knowing you have roughly 3 to 4 weeks of groceries in the back of your car.
Maybe, yeah.
And it's a sense of safety that you don't understand or don't experience unless you've been in a situation where you know to $1 what's in your checking account at any given time, right? And so that's where that came from.
Ah, okay. Well, and it's a very interesting series, and I've always considered it urban fantasy because I use the urban term kind of loosely in terms of, yes, there is rural fantasy, suburban fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it all qualifies. Now you also then took a little bit of a left turn, I guess we could say, with the Kinsman series. And what can you tell us about that? How do you describe that one?
Harlequin Presents in Space.
Okay.
They're all of the Kinsman series, right? There's 3 of them now. All of them are actually classic Harlequin Presents tropes. You know, Harlequin Presents would do these very short kind of romance novels, right? That would be, they were kind of lower priced and they were very, very numerous. And you would walk into the store and it would be like a display full of them, right? And they were very tropey, but they delivered that emotional impact. Nothing delivered emotional impact as well as a Harlequin Presents. They had that down to an art, right? And so the first one was Arranged Marriage. The second one is His Secretary.
Oh, he's a billionaire boss, right?
Yeah, billionaire boss and his secretary. The third one was the Fated Mates. We haven't done the Secret Baby yet. That would be probably the next one.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah. But they're all basically incredibly violent. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot of they're all set in this futuristic world on a planet. The humanity has colonized basically the known galaxy. And so, this particular planet, rather, be very beautiful. There's flowers, there's gardens, and the culture is kind of very vivid. There's a lot of colors. There's a lot of, spice in the food. Like they're extra on almost everything they do. And so in this setting, they're during an attempt to basically settle across the known galaxy, the civilization came up with some enhanced humans because it was, it helped them with environmental challenges that they had and so on. And eventually those enhanced humans, which were called kinsmen, kind of settled everywhere. And each planet kind of has its own kinsman culture. But Rada in particular is all about family and traditions and family competition and,
everything is just extra.
Everything is extra. The Harlequin Presents was so extra, we have to kind of match it.
Right. You have to fit into that mold. Yeah. Now your Innkeeper series is kind of a combination of sci-fi and fantasy. And can you describe that one for us?
Men in Black meets the Miyazaki movie in a bed and breakfast.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, there's definitely a Men in Black element to it, isn't it?
Yeah.
That sort of not even just the movie. The I don't know how familiar you are, Carol. But like I watch a lot of paranormal TV. The almost urban legend of Men in Black are these scary, sometimes demonic figures who appear to people who've seen UFOs
and
very either
threaten them to never reveal
vaguely
information,
threatening or very specifically threatening.
Yeah.
So there's that element of like, we got to keep it hidden.
We don't have necessarily Men in Black. Here's what it is, right? The Earth happens to be on a crossroad of a numerous, basically, wormholes and dimensional waypoints, gates, right? And, you know, it's so valuable that basically an agreement was reached long ago where galactic civilizations agreed to leave the Earth alone and not basically influence it in any way, in return for it kind of quietly serving as Atlanta of the, you know, traveling galaxy travel, where people, basically beings from all over the galaxy, kind of have a stopover and on the way to somewhere else. So they usually arrive, you know, by secret means. They stay in very specialized inns, right? And you know, with the inns themselves are symbiotic in a way. They have almost more in common with trees than actual buildings, right? And within the inn, the innkeeper is supreme. They can bend the laws of physics. They can, you know, do funky things. They can open gates to other planets. You know, very, very powerful. Outside of the inn, they're maybe slightly more powerful than your average human.
And the main thing is safety and secrecy.
Yes, it's basically our guests. You know, the safety of our guests is our first priority. That's their you know, and there's only one rule: the Earth must never know, so to speak.
Yeah.
So,
well, the general populace.
Yeah, the general populace, right? At one point, you know, there's very persistent police officer finally figures it out, and he asks them serious questions. He's like, "Does the president know?" And the innkeeper's like, "I have no idea." You know, like. So it's interesting. It's a very interesting series. It's an explosion of weirdness. There's like philosopher chickens, right?
Yeah.
So there's this alien basically creatures that look very much like chickens with little arms, right? And they debate philosophy. They have this long, you know, they travel with scrolls that kind of look like reams of toilet paper, right, on the so they can write things down. You know, and it's some in the latest one of the latest ones, the philosopher chicken, he's the grand scholar, right? This older gentleman that's very funny.
Enormous headdress,
right? Tiny chicken, giant headdress. And he basically and it keeps sliding off, and he actually has two apprentices who like periodically plonk it back on his head. He actually was trying to save someone. He was trying to save a werewolf woman. And he had this match of wits with a sphinx who was just enormous, like the size of a tall building. And he won.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, not only he won, but he was like, "You are an embarrassment to your teacher. You should go back and own up to your mistakes."
And the great thing I love so much about the innkeeper is that we always serialized it, and more than one person told us that it was dumb, that it wouldn't work to present it, the vast majority of each book, for free on the blog, you know, as a serialized thing. But I like to think it worked.
It worked, yeah. It is actually, believe it or not, it is our unit number-wise best-selling series to date. There's nothing outsold Innkeeper right now, right? We were terribly. We had to do so. We just have a new series, right, with Thor, and we had to do kind of like a "I love me" presentation to the marketing, so they could take that and then convince bookstores to carry the book. And when we pulled all the numbers, it was amazing. I was like, wow, like what happened? Because it at the start it wasn't like a great. It sold really well, but it wasn't a great seller. It didn't outsell Kate.
Yeah,
it outsold Kate. It outsold Hidden Lake.
Who's going to buy the book? If you get it every week for free until the end, nobody's going to buy it. They already read it.
Turns out that everybody bought.
Well, we always hold a few things back.
I guess they did.
No, it's really fun to have it. Have it there.
Oh, it's so much fun. Like the last one we had was almost like a. It was almost like variation on Bachelor in Space.
Yeah, we want to do a Bachelor in Space.
Yeah, because we wanted to give a grand tour of all the different civilizations and galaxies, because they're very action-packed books normally, and so the focus is somewhat narrow. And thus we wanted to like the pageantry of it, right? And we actually had like different marriage candidates. I think there was 12 of them, and people voted for who should win and who should marry median.
We had never watched The Bachelor, but our oldest daughter got us to watch one season.
Yeah, she got us to watch one season of it, right? We will never watch it again.
No.
But it was an interesting experience, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, people enjoyed it. People get into it. People get emotionally invested.
Yeah, so the elevator pitch for the last one would have been The Bachelor in Space.
Yeah, but The Bachelor in Space.
Well, that's good. Yeah. Well, I know I've heard a lot of people, whether it's comments that I've seen online or when you guys were at Con in 2024, people brought up that series a lot. So it's obviously has, quite a following. But then we come to the Hidden Legacy series. I just grabbed one off the shelf.
I'm gonna show off. They did the new covers.
Woo! Oh, nice! Yeah, that's very nice.
The Bulgarian cover, yeah.
Yeah, we just saw Bulgarian. Oh no, we can't. I don't know how to do the thing, but it's a new gorgeous cover.
But you don't have it on your phone then.
I don't believe they would be able to see it, honey. I can give it.
Yes, you can do it.
Hold on. Where is it?
Hang on.
Hold on while we're having the technical difficulties.
You can see it. Isn't that pretty?
Oh yes, very nice. Yes.
Yeah. So okay. This was more like this was magic dynasties with hereditary powers.
Yeah.
Clash in modern Houston over wealth and influence.
To me, this is much more than anything we've ever done. This is the most traditional urban fantasy thing to me, because it is very urban. It's set in Houston. It is fantasy in the sense that people have powers.
What do they say it is? Like, maybe we can steal it.
I don't know.
Like, do they see?
No, Gordon, I agree with you. I believe that's
like what I think of urban fantasy. It's just, the only difference is it's not necessarily dystopian.
No. Okay. So at the core, what this is about is what happens if you take a small group of people and give them almost unlimited power and then expect them to police themselves. What happens, right?
Yeah.
And so predictably chaotic, terrible things happen. Basically, the premise of the book is that sometime couple of 100 years ago, people were trying to come up with a medicine to I believe it was tuberculosis they were trying to basically combat. And they came up with Osiris serum, which kind of simultaneously was produced all around the world, and they gave it to everybody. It had one of three things happened, right? If you took it, you died. You became a horribly mutated kind of creature and also died. Or you developed really spectacular magic powers like lightning, spitting fire, doing weird telekinesis, yeah,
and all the good stuff.
So they gave it to everybody.
Actually, we do have telekinesis.
No, we have teleportation. It requires like a
is it line of sight?
No, it requires like
the circles. Yeah.
Remember, he teleports in the second book.
Oh yeah, but that's okay.
So basically what happens, right, is they give the serum to everybody, and then they have World War I, and horrific things happen. And it was so terrible because predictably giving somebody power to level a city block with like one strike of lightning is not a good idea. They decide that no, that's it. We need to put the genie back in the bottle. And so they lock away Osiris serum. It's illegal now. Like everybody has a stockpile, but they're not using it. Kind of like nuclear weapons.
Yeah,
right?
But the problem is it ended up being hereditarily passed. And that was, I don't want to say they didn't think it was, they just didn't know.
They didn't know at the time, right? And so over time, there evolved magical dynasties. That's like, this is a dynasty of pyrokinetics. This is a dynasty of like people that, induce fear. This is a dynasty of poisoners, and predictably, because it was hereditary, genetics became very important, and they started kind of breeding, because I would hesitate to say that, like it's not, when it's so calculated. I don't know if it could be even considered to be arranged marriage, but they
I would almost call it selective breeding.
selective breeding for greater power,
term, yeah.
right?
Well, it's a way to maintain their power, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly. It was a requirement. Let's say, like Ilona and I had a similar power. We have 2 children in real life. The way it could work, both could have it. One could have it, or what they term unfortunately is a dud with neither of them.
Yes,
but likely the odds are in that case, at least one of our children would have.
It's meant to be a
power.
cautionary tale on many levels, on what happens to power, on the dangers of selective breeding and attempting to treat humans as, strains of beings or something.
People are classified by their level.
Yeah, they're
power.
classified, but it's very stratified.
It's stratified. Yeah, that's
yes.
good.
And so in this world, there is basically Nevada Baylor, and Nevada Baylor is a PI. She is not like a fancy PI where it's like, oh, the dame was hysterical,
Dames often are.
Yeah, but no, none of that silliness. She takes very simple cases. It's mostly worker comp, fraud, cheating spouses, finding missing people occasionally, very low key. Because what happened to her is her father and her mother actually ran a detective agency, but then her mother was critically injured and her father died of illness. And so she took the agency at the age of 17 because, they needed money desperately because they sank everything into experimental treatment trying to keep the father from dying. Because of that, she, by the time the first book starts, she's, I think, 25. She's basically very used to the way things work.
Yeah, she's a seasoned pro. She's running the business.
Yeah, she's running the business well.
She's clearly in charge of it.
She has 2 younger sisters and 2 younger cousins, which were adopted into the family. And so, she's trying to make sure that everybody goes to college. It's very, very mundane. Like, her philosophy is if she sees a fight, she's going to run away from it because nobody can afford the medical bills. So the interesting thing is she has a really strong talent that she's hiding. She can tell when people are lying, which is very handy.
Yeah, very handy indeed. She makes good use of it.
She makes good use of it.
Especially and then, in the detecting business.
Through no fault of her own, she becomes drawn into this massive clash between like magical heavyweights of Houston.
Which her family is not considered to be.
Yeah, they're not. They're just basically not. And then it comes out that, she is, somebody who you didn't expect her to be. And then in the course of this investigation, my favorite, like whenever I want to gloss over the synopsis when we give it to our editors, right? Like in the course of investigation, which will cover like 50,000 words, right? And she runs across Connor Rogan, who is an incredibly powerful telekinetic. He at one point was in the army, and he saw war, and it crushed him. It crushed him morally. It made him into somebody he wasn't ever supposed to be. And he is not dealing very well with civilian life. His moral compass is kind of skewed. This guy divides everybody into non-combatant, civilian, right? Enemy or friend. There is no shades of gray there. And so they end up basically working towards the same goal. And then we have a romance over 3 books.
Yay. It's a slow burn. It's a slow
burn. It's a very hot burn at the end. They take a while, but they explode.
And I would say a lot of we've talked about this. Hidden Legacy, a lot of it is basically wish fulfillment of a big yet very close family.
Yes.
Which is a thing that we do not either of us have.
Yes. Yes. It's this huge, basically weird family, and they care so much over each other. It's not one of those where like somebody hates their sisters.
No.
It's they're very, very close.
It's generational. It ends up with being, to give a spoiler away, like grandparents, parents, them, their cousins.
Yeah, it's a very family oriented, series. And then we did 3 books, and then we moved on to the middle sister, did 3 books there, and we were going to do the younger sister, but for reasons we couldn't. We'll hopefully come back to it later.
Well, that would be good. I know that the novella that came in between the first 3 books about Nevada, and then the second 3. Why is her name escaping me?
Arabella, Nevada, Catalina, and Arabella.
Yes. And when, the novella was kind of a nice bridge between the two aspects there. And it's I enjoy that series immensely. So
thank you.
You'll be happy to know our youngest is on your side. She considers herself to be Arabella.
Oh,
has demanded that she gets her books.
Yes, and she informed us at some point, give people what they want. And I was like, what do the people want? She's like, me. They want me. I was like, settle down.
She does closely resemble Arabella.
Yes, she's short and blonde.
There you go. Now, I know you started a couple of your sort of spin-off series from the Kate Daniels world, and actually one series even has that particular title. I think that came out even before, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it was after. I'm getting my years mixed up here.
We did Blood Air, right? Which is Kate. At some point, Kate kind of adopts Julie, which is a little girl who basically was almost a street kid at the point of adoption. Unfortunate things happened to her parents, and so. But that book came about during pandemic, when the COVID hit. We were just flooded by really worried, messages, emails. People seemed to be really desperate, and people were very worried. And one in particular really got to us, where it was a nurse in New York, and she was standing outside of the containment unit, right, where there was a COVID wing. And she basically said, look, I'm typing this on my phone. I'm leaning against the wall. I haven't slept in like 12 hours, on my feet, whatever. And I just want something to look forward to. Can you please give me something to look forward to? Mm-hmm. And so we ended up writing Blood Air, which was horribly out of sequence. It wasn't meant to be written at that point, but in that book, Julie cannot go home. It's very, very similar to what was happening during the pandemic.
A lot of people couldn't go home.
Yeah. Right. And so we felt that was our kind of best way to go forward. We did that. Previously to that.
Well, the one you may be thinking of, Carol, is Iron and Magic, which is written between the series, continued after that. But that was Andrea and Raphael's book, kind of.
No. Iron and Magic is not Andrea's.
Oh, who am I thinking of? Oh, Gunmetal Magic. Gunmetal Magic. Sorry.
Yeah, Gunmetal Magic was basically Andrea and Raphael book, which was a spin-off, which is basically a couple from Kate Daniels'
Iron and Magic is a different book. That is the U book.
Iron and Magic was started actually as a joke. So at some point, a friend of ours basically said, Hugh Dambray, who is one of the bigger antagonists in the series, is very much a romance hero. I was like, ha, 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 ha. So we made a mock copy for April 1st, the full day, where it said, Warlord coming soon to the store near you, Iron and Magic. And we just threw kind of like a weird romance storyline out there. And people decided to take it very seriously. They actually started requesting it at libraries. We would get messages from librarians going like, they filled out a little card saying that, they want the book. How can we order the book? I was like, there's no book. It was a joke.
Yeah, I remember we were down here in New Braunfels, which is a charming German town close to us, having kolaches.
Yes,
and thinking the whole thing was very funny. And then
and then it was like, oh crap,
we have to do this now.
yeah, and we ended up doing it, and it was very well received. I guess we pulled it off. But yeah, it's very interesting, and that is it's split between Hugh Dambray and Ilara, who is kind of like, we don't really say what she is, but
Right.
basically it's an arranged marriage trope to some extent. He is in charge of a he kind of comes back out of seclusion to save his soldiers that he led at one point. And she is being in her people are also like, they're alchemists, they're kind of herbalists, they're a peaceful community. So long story short, he needs a base, she needs soldiers. She has a base, she has actually a castle in Kentucky, and they kind of get together, they agree to marry on paper to make the alliance seem strong to other people.
Right.
And they instantly hate each other, just instant hatred. And so it's kind of what happens with that.
And that was a bit of a challenge. Like, could among ourselves, we spoke, I guess, between ourselves, the two of us, could we successfully rehabilitate someone as horrible as Hugh Dambray? Like, wouldn't that be a coup if we could turn him, Kate Dillon, into his own?
Yeah,
like,
and seriously,
how would we do that?
How would we do that?
Like, why would we do that?
You had to answer the why, and then you had to do the how, right?
We currently are working on the sequel finally after many years, because we were hoping to write it much earlier, but COVID happened, and that book is a little bit dark, and there was not a lot of dark left at that point in us. So
yeah, things were rough, I think, for everybody, to a different extent. It's kind of like that book Hard Times about the Great Depression. It varied for some people. For some people it was really, really bad, and for some people, they just weathered it out and lived like they always live.
Right.
Yeah. So, and we're just, finally we're kind of coming back to it. Actually, I'm supposed to give people a snippet on Friday, since I do the blog, but like I've got nothing. And for the other projects we're due, and we finished them last week, but like the brain is completely mush.
Yeah, and it's hard to do that. It's hard to do edits on one book and then
like shift gears.
Sometimes it's good to do that because you stop editing, but like it's hard to switch back and forth.
Yeah, it's very hard to switch back and forth. But generally work on one thing at a time.
Yeah, we're not smart.
We're not smart.
We're not good at multitasking.
Yeah.
Well, I was curious about that as well, because I know some people who do work on both at the same time, but most of the people that I've asked have said that they, have to do one at a time. Now, you also have continued on with the Wilmington years with Kate Daniels, and Roman got a story, and and I know that there's more expected in the Wilmington years. So yes, you can't leave it that way. I know
no worries.
The magic plant. We got to have
one more. We're trying to kind of lay a foundation for the events of Blood Air 2, which we've
things need to happen. Weirdly, things need to happen in the Wilmington series and in
the Iron and Magic 2
then
for the next Blood Air to make sense.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
The timeline is all out of whack.
Yeah, and this was not the way we normally work. Like normally we're very chronological, and this was just all over the place. And I blame the pandemic. That's my answer. Okay.
Well, we can blame that for a lot of things. Now, one of the things that I think stands out about Sanctuary, Roman's story, is that it did, and I mean, you talk about it in the foreword, that it gave you a chance to explore a lot of folklore. And
it was so fun. It was so fun because there's a lot of Slavic folklore in it, which is usually by and large ignored. And the reason being is that we actually don't know a great deal about Slavic folklore. It's kind of like we don't know a lot about Druids, right? A lot of what we know about Druids comes to us from like Roman writings or Greek writings, because Druids, their culture, their tradition, a lot of it was based on oral inheritance, right? A similar thing kind of happened with Slavic mythology in that we have folkloric traditions, right? Like Ivan Kupala night, right? Or Maslenitsa. But we do not necessarily have a written record that explains things to us.
Right.
Namely, like Greek myths, we have massive amount of myths,
because
right?
of Homer, yeah.
We have Icelandic sagas. Even Egyptians wrote things down. The Chinese, the Han, they wrote things down. So we have the wealth of culture there. And Slavic traditions are kind of not there. What happened, right? Eventually, because there's kind of a resurgence of nationalism in a way in Russia post Perestroika. We always had Belini, which were like old myths and fairy tales that were kind of retold, right?
Mm.
And so there was a person that basically took a bunch of that material and kind of came up with his own version of Slavic mythology.
You think like a Bullfinch's mythology, but instead
it was a little bit more of he made some stuff up, right? Wouldn't it be cool if we did this, right?
Yeah.
He's like, nobody will catch me. It's mythology, right? So,
He got to
right.
claim to have found some ancient Russian writings, and when people who knew what ancient Russian writings were looked at it, they said, okay, there's massive amount of grammatical mistakes. He's mashing different like sentence structure from different centuries together. This is clearly a forgery. But what emerged was this kind of very fun Slavic mythos, which was mostly made up, but had a little bit of truth to it.
Right.
And so that's what we used actually. It's now it kind of serves as a base for neo-pagan Russian movement, and that we used like a modified version of it for Raman. You could say it's authentic. You could say it's not. It's really in the eye of the beholder. It was fun to write. It's fiction. So.
Yeah. Well, it was obvious you were having a good time with it. There were a number of different, stories / creatures or types of things that turned up. So that was it was pretty obvious that you were enjoying it.
Yeah.
Now, when you think back over things that you've written, do you have any, or who are your favorite secondary or recurring characters from any of the series, that anything that you've written in the past? Did you have any favorites to write, people that you enjoyed writing?
I really loved writing Lady Ilona from the Innkeeper series. She is the head of a vampire house, space vampire house. She's this giant woman, armor, sword, very forward. I just loved her no nonsense approach to things. Like, why aren't you married? When are you going to get married? Why don't we just kill them?
Yes.
I will go and I will set their planet on fire. I don't know. I really love writing her. A lot of my secondary characters currently are coming from This Kingdom Will Not Kill Me, because we just finished working on the developmental edit, and like for a lot of writers, the last book that you have written is your favorite at the time.
Right.
You go ahead.
Probably William from the Edge series.
Oh, okay.
He is, for whatever reason, I don't know why. Maybe I identify with him more. And I really liked his book.
Yeah, the Bayou Moon.
Yeah, the Bayou Moon. That's one of my favorites. Like, nobody read it, but I really liked it.
I read it. I wrote a review of it.
Yeah, I like William. And I think probably from the same weird series, Gaston.
Yes, Gaston is so fun. He also pops up in the Innkeeper. He is
he was the MC in the last Innkeeper.
Gentleman of adventure with our occasional foray into skullduggery. Yeah, he's a super fun character to write.
Yeah, those are probably my favorites. I like those.
Now, what about antagonists? Who have been your favorite antagonists? I don't want to say villains because sometimes they turn out to be bad and then there's more nuance to them, or they're, maybe in Hugh's case, they're reformed somewhat as time goes on. So we'll call them antagonists, but who have been your favorites?
Well, Hugh, of course, Roland, his father,
Yeah.
super fun antagonist to write, so conflicted. Very complicated, very, very complicated dude. I really like, so in one of the Innkeeper books, there's a civilization that's on the verge of being exterminated by a planet of very religious beings who decided to kind of declare holy war against them, right? And to the point to where if they manage to kill one of the creatures, their place in their heaven is assured, right? And of course, all this comes apart once the book unfolds, because yes, they
And it's really not tied to theology. I just personally find them distasteful.
Well, yeah, it's about maintaining power and all those things. But there's the head of the kind of assassin flock, because they're almost avian, right? Draziri. And he is just he was so much fun to write. Interestingly, here's one of my favorites. The Innkeeper series has been optioned by Graphic Audio, which is they do audiobooks a little bit differently. It's a full cast, so every character has its own voice, and the production is spectacular. It has like music. It's almost like those old-fashioned radio shows, right? And whoever did the voice for that particular Kiran, for that particular basically assassin, just knocked it out of the park. And I am so unreasonably proud.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Having written that villain specifically because of that performance.
Yeah, we will be doing things and we will listen to those and we'll be like, look at each other and be like, oh
we
my
wrote
God,
that. We wrote that. Yes.
Holy crap. It's so transformative. I'm like, I can't believe we wrote that. That's crazy.
Yeah, they added so much. They took our writing from just writing and made it into something special. It's purely through the power of their talent. But it's just those are my current favorites.
So like you said, I don't know if I would say she's a villain, but like Grandma Victoria from the Hidden Legacy series, she's there. They even call her their evil grandmother.
Yeah.
And I feel like she is misunderstood, and she knows that they call her the evil grandmother.
It hurts her feelings.
It hurts her feelings. That's why, because she does not consider herself the evil grandma. Like in her mind, she did all the things that she had to do.
Yeah, at some point there's a giant blowout, and she's like, and you, I know what you call me. You call me and your evil grandmother. And Catalina's like, oh no, please don't. Like,
oh, shoot, we thought it was a secret. Yeah.
They have their nice grandma Frida, who works on tanks, and then they have evil grandma Victoria, who
lobotomizes people.
Yes, and then resided in a penitentiary, largely sprung from prison. And I don't know, like, yes, that villain. I guess Roland, for a lot of the same reasons.
Spider was fun. Spider was
fun. But like again, Roland, like Grandma Victoria, does not consider himself a villain or a bad guy.
No, right. He's just Roland is a hero. No,
he is a hero of his own
story. Yeah.
Yes, he brings very civilization.
Much. It's so boring.
And he did love her, all the way to the very end.
Yeah, he still loves her,
Yeah, he still loves her.
Yes, she's still his super favorite, Blossom and all that. But
even he's in prison. So we apparently have a theme of in prison.
We didn't get it. Why we discovered
Lucky
something
for us
new.
That we don't have any.
We don't have any, unfortunately.
Yes.
Yeah, all of our grandparents have passed for various reasons.
Lucky for them, I guess, because.
Well, no, Gwen's grandmother was probably the only one on his side of the family who actually
She read the books.
Yeah.
Yes, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother read the books, and she was proud of us. I will
Yes.
say that.
Oh, well, there you
Yes,
go.
it was. Yes.
Uh,
Yes, it was.
Yeah,
Mima was lovely.
she was cool.
uh,
Yeah.
now, speaking, you mentioned Kate a little bit ago, and if Kate and Curran together could make a guest appearance in any other UF book series, which would it be? Even if it either was for the duration of the story, or if they just turned up and somebody ran into them in a restaurant. Well, what series do you think that would be the most fun?
Are we talking about like Janine Frost?
Or like
series?
other people's series,
Yes.
our series? Because
Or other people's, other people's.
I am not going to answer that.
I'm gonna say
Okay.
I would like to see Cat and Bones up against Kate and Curran.
Well, that's true. They would probably just sit there and look at each other and size each other up,
Oh,
wouldn't
yeah,
they?
two vampires, like and a werewolf and this, super killer.
Because it'd be like, are those their vampires? That's what their vampires
Vampires
look like.
yeah.
Are you guys supposed to be vampires? Like, how does that?
Yeah.
How is she half a vampire? How does that work?
Yeah, how does it work? Yeah, like
They don't smell like vampires.
I guess, yeah, maybe that. Ginny won't get mad at us for that.
Probably. Hopefully.
Well, they're different. They're different.
Yeah,
Let's
they're
put it
different.
that way.
It's for a while when the urban fantasy genre was exploding, right? Somebody coined the phrase of our vampires are different, right? Because each new book had some kind of weird spin on the vampires or werewolves or whatever. So there's so many different iterations in those kind of like mid 2000s series of urban fantasy. Not as much urban fantasy published now, unfortunately. I still love the genre.
Yeah. Well, please keep writing it because
we have bills and kids and bills.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Now, do each of you have, and they may be different, do you have a favorite book that you wrote, and of your of any of your series? Do you have a favorite book, and was there one that you particularly struggled with?
Oh yeah.
Well, obviously, whatever we finished last is the favorite. So this
is Maggie.
Right.
Yeah, right now Maggie is the favorite. If I had to pick other ones, I honestly just really loved all of the Innkeeper series. Emerald Blaze of Hidden Legacy, I think, is one of the best books we wrote because it like everything kind of came together perfectly in that book for us.
Emerald Blaze, and then conversely, Ruby Fever.
Ruby Fever was the hardest. I don't have it here. I have Emerald Blaze. I have banished the Ruby Fever from the house.
And one of the reasons I was talking to one of our children, and I was like, look, don't throw anything away because what we cut from Ruby Fever is probably larger than the actual turned in manuscript.
Yeah.
And I was advising her, don't cut anything. Like, you can use it later. You can have
you can repurpose it later.
Cut files. But we cut so many beginnings of that book to where we drove and said, I think we're on the wrong road. We have to turn around and go back.
Again, it was due right when the pandemic started, right? We started working on it right when the pandemic started. And it was just not going. It was going into the office, staring at each other and just sitting in hatred. Because one of the interesting thing about us is people like sometimes ask us, well, if somebody gave you a whole bunch of money, would you sell out and write something that you don't like? The answer is we would give it a try.
We would try, but we probably couldn't.
Couldn't do it because the thing is, we work on what we work on. It is, you either have inspiration for it or you don't. In the sense that it's not that we sit around and wait for inspiration to strike, but some story grabs you and you keep going with it. and some story just does not. And so Ruby Fever was a labor of perseverance. It took us almost a year and a half to finish, which normally is not our case. Normally we knock out books in 6 to 8 months. And so it was excruciatingly hard. It's a good book. We're proud of the fact that we finished it. But we did try to like stop writing it multiple times, and we had conversations with our agent where we're like, could we give the money back? And she would say, no, let's not give the money back, let's keep going. And finally she hit on the one thing where she could make us basically guilty enough. She's like, but guys, what about the readers? They're waiting for the conclusion. And we went back into the office and tried again.
And the reason why is because for us, like kind of in our minds collectively, Emerald
Blaze
was the done. That was it. Like as far as we were concerned, we both really liked that book. We were proud of that book. It concluded the arc, but contractually we were obligated for one more book, so we kind of had to do it. But we didn't want to do it.
We had some loose ends there, but
we did need to tie.
We did need to tie up. The hero's family was up in the air. Her position sort of. As head of the family in her professional position, which I'm not going to go into, was kind of up in the air. So it did need that book.
We knew we needed to do it. We just didn't want to do it.
Yeah, but we didn't want to write it.
Collectively, it wouldn't.
Did not want to write it.
Normally, it's good that there's two of us because one of us would be like, "Come on, we have to do it." In this case, we were in solidarity and not wanting to do it.
Yeah, that's not wanting to do it. Usually, if one of us is like, I don't want to write today, I don't want to, I can't, my brain hurts. The other one will be like, come on, we will do it, we'll get it done, let's go, we'll knock out a scene, and we'll
do a scene, like with Bart, like, come on, we'll do a scene.
We'll do a scene. We typically tend to write a scene a day, yeah, unless the scene is just super long somehow, and we just
need to do more.
But typically it's like obviously if the scene is very, very short, then we're doing the next one as well. But typically it's usually like a scene at a time. For example, for the last Iron Magic 2, we sat down and we kind of wrote out the whole chapter, because the whole chapter was very it was like almost a chunk by itself that needed to be worked through.
Yeah.
But with that book, it was just false start after false start after false start.
It was. We couldn't get a hold of it. We just couldn't get a firm.
We knew kind of what it needed to be, and we couldn't get.
Well, we knew what we needed to do. We just, we did.
It was so frustrating.
That's probably our least ever favorite. That and the first Kate book, because it's terrible.
Yeah.
And
unfortunately, Kate books did not age well. They were written, at a time where world was kind of a different place.
Well, we were just very green, dear.
We were very green. We weren't super good writers, and we tried our best. We always try our best.
It's always as good a book as we can do at the time.
Yes. We even Ruby Fever, which we collectively hated, was our absolute best effort at the time. We did our best.
Right. Blood, sweat, and ruby tears, huh?
No. Okay, no, that's not right, because we were not really working in the salt mines,
at some point I would have, rather than that.
Yeah,
I would have. I would have gone back to working in a tire retreading plant. So.
We are very privileged.
I've done that, Carol. I've worked that job. The job that Forrest Gump's mom didn't want him to do.
Yeah, he took it.
I've done that.
Yeah, there you go.
She was right.
Yeah, it was 2000, basically, recession with the housing crisis. And people were his position was eliminated. And he went to work at a tire trading plant to feed the kids.
And it's as fun as you would imagine.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Well, now for my last question, because this is something you have alluded to a couple of times, but I did want to save it for the end so you could describe it in a little more detail. You guys have something big coming up next, and what can you tell us about Maggie?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So here's how Maggie started. There is a genre that is very popular in like Asian literature and manhwa, manga, anime, which is called isekai. And it's basically kind of, revolves around picking up a person from one world and tossing them into another world, right? And seeing what happens. And sometimes they have superpowers, and sometimes they kind of end up in the body of a character, right? Like they're reading their favorite book and they end up in the body of the character, usually like a villainess or somebody, right? So there's this whole genre of work centered around it, right? And we have read a whole bunch of it. And eventually I started kind of puttering around, and I was like, I was writing a little story, and he looked at it and I was like, is this something or is this nothing? And he said, I think it's something. So we started working on it, and we got it to the novella stage, right? We showed it to our agent, who was kind of not.
She wasn't thrilled.
She wasn't thrilled.
Not quite on board.
Yeah, not quite on board.
She was kind of lukewarm on it. I hope she doesn't see this because she's going to dispute that.
Yeah.
But I stand by that.
Yes. So she kind of convinced us to put it away for a bit. We put it away for about a year, but it kept nagging and nagging and nagging. So we went and we wrote a manuscript, right? We showed it to her again. She requested extensive changes. We went back. We looked at the changes she requested. We didn't do what she wanted. We did something different. Came back again. Rewrote it again. Then finally we were like, okay, that's it. Let's just find the publisher for it. And if nobody publishes it, we'll self-publish it. It went to several publishers.
I will say, like, we had zero expectations.
It was a small, weird story. And so we went on submission on Thursday. On Friday, Tor came back with a preempt, which is basically when they write you a big check and say, don't sell it to anybody else. Don't look at anybody else. Don't take anybody else's offers. We will buy this. It's ours. Give us the thing. And then we had, our agent was kind of surprised. We had an emergency Zoom. We all talked about the offer. They gave us everything we wanted. We asked for some specific things, and they were like, sure, you can have it. And you can
I will say Tor has been amazing. Like, Tor has been great. Like,
yep.
Everybody, Tor, Stephanie, our editor.
Stephanie Stein was our editor. Is our editor. And this was an incredible experience for us, even though we've been published for a really long time. You know how in movies, sometimes movies often portray publishing industry in unrealistic ways, right? So for example, there's this wonderful scene in Romancing the Stone, right? Yeah. Where, her editor is reading the book and she's crying. And that's actually not even her editor. I think it's her publisher who's reading the book, even higher on the, So that typically is not how it goes. Usually what we're used to kind of commercial fiction writing where your editor reads the book, they have a single editorial pass, right? You implement the changes, they look over it and they say, okay, it's ready for copy edit, we're going. Yeah. This was not that. So Stephanie Stein read the book and she really, really liked it. And she was like, okay, you've attempted to stuff a really large book into a very small word count. Please go back and kind of, let's flesh it out.
Novel length. It wasn't novella length.
No, it was novel length at that point. We fleshed it down. We fleshed it out. So it went from this to probably about.
You reckon?
This.
Oh boy. Okay.
Well, the idea was, I don't know. I think we were either naive or overly optimistic. It would be like, here it is. We're not going to really do anything. You can have it or not have it. Like, we're not going to make any changes. Like, here's the finished manuscript, because it was finished in our mind at that point.
Yeah.
That's not quite how it
went. So we fleshed it out, and then she did another edit, very, very thorough edit that basically pointed out and here and here and here and here and here, whereas the story is not quite coming together. We did another edit. At that point, our basically moderator and admin was keeping track because she kept getting all the versions, and I was like, I think this is edit number 4, or she's like, no, this is edit number 7.
Yeah, 7. Yeah.
Right?
But who's counting?
Oh, she was.
So then we turned in edit number 7, and Stephanie did another pass. So we just turned in edit number 8, which is
Yeah.
hopefully final. But the book evolved. Somehow it went from kind of this weird story
It was
to
very
like
slice of life, with very low stakes.
very low
initially.
stakes initially, and just kind of grim and weird. And then now it's this kind of vibrant medieval political thriller.
Yeah.
It still has all the what we were trying to do is we're trying to kind of portray fandom in a way, because Maggie, the titular character, she is basically an personification of fandom. She is the kind of person who's read, she gets transported into her favorite fantasy series, and she has read that series a million times over. It was never finished. They're 2 gargantuan books, but book number 3 never came out, something a lot of people can relate to.
Right?
Not naming names.
Not naming names. We ourselves are guilty. But so she pops into this world, except she doesn't end up in a body of anybody. She doesn't take anyone over. She doesn't have magical powers. She just literally lands in like
As herself. She still looks like herself.
naked in a water basically filled ditch in the middle of the city, in the middle of basically a storm, with no like clothes, no weapons, no
Nothing.
powers, nothing. Right? Where does she go from here?
And that's kind of the story.
That's kind of the story. We have all the archetypical, tropes of the genre. We have, the knights, the monsters, the like
Powerful magic users.
incredibly powerful mages. We have an assassin with like its own like assassin secret network thing. We have, a king whose hold on reality is slipping. It is all those super fun tropes that we all know and love that we get to mess with. It's so much
It
fun.
is. It is kind of an homage, I think, to isekai as a genre, because we both enjoy it. Like, one of my favorite series I watched with her was a Korean chef who goes back into, I don't even know if it's real Korea time.
Mr. Quinn. It's Mr. Quinn.
Is
Yeah,
it?
he goes back into the body of a
Of like a
Korean
princess.
queen.
Yeah.
Oh my God, the performances in that are so good. It's a beautiful story.
Because he looks like her, and he's obviously in her body, and he's in the place where she should be, but he's still him in his mind.
Right.
Food, like I think he attempts to recreate McDonald's
At
food at some point.
yes, or like he, it's the historical Korean, fiction and dramas are very, women are incredibly elegant and they're stately and they move a certain way. And here's this beautiful woman in the traditional Korean basically outfit, like kind of marching, and then spreads, and you're like, oh my God! Like if you watched Korean dramas, like historical Korean dramas, the comedic value is incredible.
Yes, because he's a modern day guy. And again, I want to add something like sort of weird here. Like, we're portraying this as a relatively new thing, but if you think about like even as far back as the books that the Flight of Dragons was based on.
Well, they were reading story. He's reading a book, and he kind of becomes a player in it. Right? Like it's just
even in Western literature, there's that theme or trope of someone going like out of their body into a different time and place.
I really think that it is resurging genre for a number of reasons. Primarily because it allows you to play with a lot of tropes, and it allows you to have incredibly high stakes. Like in a typical isekai, sometimes a character will pop into a body of, let's say, a villain, right? Who is to be executed in 2 days. You know,
Yeah.
how is he going to like?
Or it's like this
Right.
younger sister, and she was the villain of the story.
Yes, she was the
And like
villain story.
everyone was going to hate her. The one we just watched recently, and she's like has to change it so that everyone doesn't hate her, and
Yes.
she's not killed.
She's not killed, right?
How much time does she have for that?
Yeah. How much time does she?
Yeah,
How does
no.
she do it? Like,
Yeah.
period. You know, and so it was very, very interesting to play with it. The series is called Maggie the Undying. The book itself, they just announced the title. It's called This Kingdom Will Not Kill Me. We don't have a order yet. We don't have a cover. It was very interesting to me because I always thought that at the beginning that it was a much smaller project, and Tor kind of took it to be a much bigger project. So we are not really allowed to reveal too much about it, but they're very excited. They're very excited. We are kind of very excited now that it's done.
Right, I bet. I was going to say, I know I read a lot of your blog posts. It's like they're
for us, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about a year and a half, and it's just it was so it's so grabby.
I don't honestly think we've ever worked on any book for that long, except the aforementioned Ruby Fever, because we didn't want
for
to
other
do
circumstances. Yeah,
but this was different experience.
Yeah.
Here's how terribly grabby this whole thing is, right? Because like, unfortunately, when we work on Maggie, some books just cannot live in your brain, right? And this is one of those. We were finishing up edit number 8, and by all rights, right? By all rights, after edit number 8, as a writer, you should be quite sick of the manuscript, right?
Yeah.
Like you looked at it 8 times, you rewrote it, you did all the stuff.
I hate this book.
Yeah, I hate this book. Instead, I was like, gosh, I wish I could write book 2 right now. I had the scene, I had the beginning of book 2 in my head by the time I finished the edit. It was like, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't. I got all stuff. That has to come first. But it's very, very grabby for us. And that could be a good thing and a bad thing. Because, sometimes it prevents you from seeing the story clearly, as it did in our case, which is why we needed 8 edits to get there. But
I know lots of people are looking forward to it, and
I hope so. We worked so hard, and I hope that
I hope it doesn't suck.
Yeah, I hope we did the fandom justice. It's just it's an interesting book. Quite unlike anything we've done before.
Yeah, it is different.
Well, and that's, I know, got to be an interesting challenge for you as well. And, it's something fresh. And I know a lot of people are excited about it. You did get to mention it a bit at Dragon Con. So
I think before they were like, well, maybe we should.
Right, yeah. You are at least able to
been working on this damn
yes, and it's here's the thing. As a writer, you kind of that old adage of evolve or die, right? It is somewhat true in a creative endeavor, because things happen in your regular life that affect you, that change your worldview. You learn things. You kind of hopefully grow creatively and as a person, right? And sometimes, that growth manifests as a radical shift in a way. We know an artist who painted beautiful covers, and she decided to take a kind of what she needed to do was paint landscapes instead, and gorgeous landscapes. So sometimes creatively you need to change direction. Maggie is a little bit of a departure for us in terms of the genre, because usually we'll work with either modern world or variation of a modern world. This is clearly an epic fantasy. Other world, nothing is the same. Even like the flora and fauna are not the same.
There's, I will say, like, there's no vampires, there's no werewolves.
There's no,
I know. It is very different.
Very different. We had to do the entirely new language, several of them.
I mean,
but it's still us. There's still fun stuff that happens. There's still our style is, of silliness.
Hopefully.
So,
Hopefully it's still recognizably us.
And do you have any idea yet when the book will be out, or like in general terms?
Next spring,
March
early-
31st of next year.
Yeah, so
Oh,
hopefully
okay.
about
All
a
right.
year.
Yeah,
So
about a year.
you've got a year to go, people. You
Yeah,
heard it here.
Good Lord,
So
Joel. You need to-
that's yeah. We have an extra cast member back there right now.
Well, we've got Miss Sookie, who's still alive. We had a bit of a
That's
trouble with
fine.
her. She's well, she's for her size, she's very old. She's at least 12. Our youngest daughter got her when she was in middle school, and now she's fixing to be, 27. So Miss Sookie is an old girl. You can see the gray in her face.
Yeah, she is. She is on quite many medications at the moment.
Yeah, she takes 4 pills in the morning and 1 pill at night.
Oh wow!
I have to give her, so yeah.
I'm
We
sure
want her to be comfortable at this point. She has arthritis, unfortunately, in her hips.
Yeah, you can tell she's out.
and
You can
knees.
do it. You can do it.
Do you need
Good
help?
job. You got it. You got it. There you
Oh,
go.
there you go. Good job.
Yay!
You made it.
The vet kind of is asking us to. For a while, we've been like hoisting her and kind of helping her walk everywhere. And she was like, no, she needs to work the muscle a little bit in her legs,
Right.
So we've been trying to do that, but yeah, there are times when I have like a length of fabric and I just kind of hoist her up, like
Right.
Yeah. I joke that she must hate us because she thinks we're the people that just like harangue her to go outside.
Yes.
Like harass her, like you have to go
Twice
outside
a day
now.
she goes outside,
Because otherwise she won't do it.
Otherwise she will just lay on the pillow.
Just too much trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, she doesn't want to do it. Oh,
Life with elder animals, I know, can be challenging. But Ilona and Gordon, I want to thank you so much for being here, answering all these questions for me today. And it's been wonderful to see the two of you again. We hope we'll get to see you in person at Dragon Con again at some point soon.
Yeah, that would be great.
That would be lovely. Thank you so much for having us. Sorry we rambled.
Yeah, we really enjoyed it.
We really enjoyed it.
We had a really fun time last time.
Yes, we had
so much good.
Fun. It was amazing.
It wasn't as
good.
humid as I thought it would be, actually.
We would love to go again.
Yeah.
We just, unfortunately, we kind of don't know what Tor wants to do in terms of the publicity for the book. So we're kind of like in limbo.
It would make sense to send us.
But it would make sense.
Yeah.
I think
It
so.
would make sense. We'll have to let them know. Say, hey, I want to say there are some other authors from Tor who end up coming. So they're certainly aware of the event at that point. But and I do want to let our viewers know that a couple of other things that we have coming up this month. Is that April 10th, we'll be doing a fan discussion of the show Chaos that was on Netflix about the Greek gods in modern day. Yeah. Yeah, we'll be doing that. And then later in April, I will be posting a panel that was actually recorded last year that is and a multi-author panel, which will have some familiar faces on it. And I won't say more right now. It'll be a nice surprise for people. But Ilona and Gordon, again, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I know that your fans are excited about everything that they have to look forward to. And, your Dragon Con fans will look forward to seeing you whenever you're able to return. That'll be wonderful. So thank you so much. Thanks to anyone who watches this interview. We appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing the two of you again soon. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us. It was lovely.
I'll just